Hello everyone. I had a request for a video. How to deal with inmates with mental illness. Now sometimes you have to go right in and subdue the inmate because they're harming themselves, destroying property, or threatening another person's life. But when they are just doing their thing, yelling, screaming, jumping around, but they're not threatening another person's life, they're not destroying property, and they're not harming themselves, my suggestion is keep your distance, call it in on the radio, and the person who is on the scene needs to be the one interacting with the inmate from a safe distance. Now remember, you've already called this in so that you have help coming on the way. But I thought the best way for me to go through this is I taught crisis intervention with another deputy for the Florida Sheriff's Association on how to deal with a person in crisis situation. We did it for the crisis intervention team, this class. This is an actual test that I made up myself for after we gave the class. We ran scenarios, so I also suggest that your agency run some different scenarios. Get your classroom together, pull a couple of deputies or officers out to the side, and then the instructors will be role-playing the mentally ill inmate and provide different scenarios and let people come up two at a time, two officers at a time, and go through some of these scenarios. We found that they really like that in the class number one because it's not so boring. We did have our slide presentation up, and we went through the slides, but we didn't concentrate much on those slides. We just used them as a guideline. We had these scenarios that they really loved, and we really got good feedback on them. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to go through the test, and this will kind of give us some discussion topics as well. One of the things we asked was developing a plan ahead of time to respond to disruptive inmates is always a good idea. True or false? Well, that's pretty simple, right? But some people don't think ahead or think outside the box. We need you to do that. The answer is true. You should be thinking of scenarios that could occur in your dorm or your pod, whether you're in prison or jail, at all times. What if an inmate goes off? I need to be ready to do this, to do that. Well, number one, you remember what I said at the beginning of the video. Mike is right here. Call for assistance. Give a description of the inmate and what's going on. If you know the inmate's name, go ahead and give the name, because we want our mental health people in the prison and jail and our medical people to be ready too. So when you give a description of the inmate and what they're doing, you are also sending some information ahead of time for your supervisors and mental health and your medical people to have. And they need that. They need to know what they're going into. That's part of our job. It's like calling 911, right? You're calling 911 within the jail or the prison. So you need to give a description. What's going on, how's the inmate acting, and what your location is. Very important. When a crisis incident is over and done, now these questions were mixed. We didn't put them in the order the way we taught. We mixed them up on purpose, but it still gets the point across here on my video. When a crisis intervention is over, you should take care not to re-escalate the individual. Make sure everyone has been checked and attended to, okay, by your medical staff and your mental health staff. And make a debriefing, making certain you have done all necessary steps, and discuss what to do the next time this situation occurs. Well, the answer is all above that I just gave you. All above. We want to debrief. We want to talk to each other. We want to see what we can do to make it better next time. We want to get treatment for the inmate with the mental health condition or the crisis intervention incident that we just had. And of course, we're going to do a report, and we're going to turn that in. That report that you do on these crisis intervention incidents is going to go not only up the chain of command for security, but it's going to go to mental health. Maybe it'll go to medical, but mental health relies on that information a lot when they try to figure out what's going on with this inmate. It is your job to diagnose the person's mental illness on the scene. Yes or no? True or false? False. It's not your job to diagnose the inmate. It helps to know symptoms of depression, symptoms of schizophrenia, symptoms of being bipolar. If you know some of these things, and it's good when you have time, I know, staff shortages, we're working overtime as it is, we're tired, but if you get a chance, learn what some of the symptoms are of these issues. It'll help you to better yourself with the incident, with controlling the inmate in an incident. Now remember, listening is okay. Listening is okay, because if the inmate is not hurting themselves, causing harm to another, destroying property, they're not hurting anybody. Let them vent, let them talk, and don't agree with them. You can say, I understand. But if they see Tom and they say, Tom is bothering me, and there is no Tom there, don't agree with them. I understand. Don't agree with them. Never buy into what they're seeing, what they're hearing. You know, they're hearing voices, they're seeing things. Don't buy into it. Just stay calm yourself, though. They're already excited. If you get crazy and forceful and you're going to do this now and shut up and shut the hell up, excuse my language, folks, but that's not the way you handle an inmate with a mental illness issue or a crisis issue. Allowing a person in a crisis to vent is all right as long as they're not harming others, themselves, or property. True, I just went through that. Several crisis intervention members or officers should take turns speaking to the inmate with the crisis, letting the person know they're not alone. Well, that's false. They've already many of these inmates have a lot of voices they're hearing. So here you are talking, right, to them, and they're looking at you, but they're hearing many, many other people talking to them. Now you want to bring several officers in to all talk to the inmate? Now you've really complicated the issue. Have the officers there for security and safety and reasons to control the inmate if it gets out of hand. But look at the inmate, and if you know the inmate's name, and say the inmate's name is Bob, say, Bob, look at me. Bob, look at me. Hey, I'm Deputy York. Listen, let's talk about this somewhere else. Let's go out here and get away from everybody if they're in the dorm or in the pod. And they could be in an isolation cell doing this as well, and we need to get them to calm down so we can get mental health and medical to come check them out. But use their first name in these situations, okay? You know you're not being too personal with the inmate in these situations when you use their first name, okay? If you don't know their first name and you don't want to use it, just say Inmate Jones. Inmate Jones, this is Deputy York. Hey, look at me, look at me. And you tell them periodically to look at you to start to listen to you. When they start to go away from you again and go into outer space listening to all the other voices, then you can tell them again, Bob or Inmate Jones, look at me, look at me. This is what we need to do, okay? Okay, I'm here. Who has the authority to initiate a Baker Act? Well, in a prisoner jail, we can do that. We have done that, Baker Acted. The circuit courts have the authority. Your authorized mental health personnel have it, and officers have it. Law enforcement officers. We are law enforcement officers in the majority of prisons and jails across the United States now. So all the answers above are correct, okay? But let me give you a hint when we're on the inside with the jails and prisons. You follow your agency's policies and procedures on the Baker Act. They may want you to have mental health be the ones to do that, okay? Just keep that in mind. Shaking your finger and yelling at a person in a crisis is always a good idea to let them know you're in charge. false. I just said earlier, yelling, screaming, and telling them you're in charge is not going to help the situation. It's going to end up causing you to get into a use of force or physical altercation. Come on, folks. Work smarter, not harder. Don't we want to try to stay away from physical altercations? We don't want to be the tough guys and get in there and fight. More and more agencies today are trying to teach their officers to use the SMART method. And if you can de-escalate an inmate, a mental health inmate, or any inmate without having to use force, that not only saves you from a possible injury. Yeah, you may win the battle, but you may break your arm, which has happened in the scuffle. You may injure your knee in the scuffle. And now the agency has to get involved. Lots of reports, lots of money involved. Come on, folks. Let's work smarter, not harder. Buying into the person's delusion is an acceptable method. We talked about that earlier. That is false. Don't buy into their illusions. Just say, I understand. Let me help you. Let me help you. Bob, look at me. Okay? For those of you who think this is a method we don't need to do, you need to catch up to the future. I know what the old days used to be with every inmate. Snatch them, catch them, snatch them, cuff them, put them away. Well, folks, times are changing, and agencies are realizing that we need to handle these mental health inmates differently. And we also need to know that we are not mental health experts, but crisis intervention training for officers is great. Every deputy in our agency here in Polk County, Florida, has gone through crisis intervention training, and some civilian staff. Our sheriff makes it mandatory, and there's other sheriffs jumping on that boat as well throughout my state here in Florida. An involuntary examination of a mental illness is, you know what, an arrest? Nope. A hospital admission? Nope. Counseling? Nope. A Baker Act. And we talked about the Baker Act earlier. If a person who is being Baker Acted has a physical injury, well, we're the law enforcement of the prisons and jails, just like on the street. Don't get them booked in. Don't take them to the mental health facility without getting them taken to medical for a medical examination. Very important that they are cleared by medical and then cleared by mental health, or mental health will tell us where they need to go, where they need to be housed. Classification gets involved in all this as well, folks. Classification needs all this information as well when you're done in your report, and then they need to determine where this inmate should be classified. Now, I told you it's good to know signs of schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, because that helps you in the situation, right? Okay, in this situation, which of the following are signs and symptoms of schizophrenia? Disorganized speech, delusions, hallucinations. It's all of the above for an inmate with schizophrenia. As long as they're not harming themselves, another person, or destroying property, let them talk it out. Let them get it out of their system while you're there. It's okay to listen. When responding to a person in a crisis, you should try to resolve it quickly. Tell the individual to shut up and sit down, cuff them and stuff them. I added that last part. Or stop, think, listen, and use your interpersonal and verbal skills to de-escalate the situation. Yes, that one. If we can do it. If we can do that. That's the best way. A person exhibiting high and low mood swings may be considered to be depressed or possible mental health inmate. Okay? Remember that. High and low mood swings could fall into several categories. So when you're dealing with a person with high and low mood swings, no, you're not dealing with a correctional officer. I thought of myself for a minute. Wow, maybe I better get myself checked out. Sometimes I get high mood swings and sometimes I get low. Hopefully I don't have an issue. But I made it through my career, and I'm happily married, so I think I'm okay. A person exhibiting high and low mood swings may be considered schizophrenic, depressed, or bipolar. Bipolar is many times and majority the right answer, bipolar. But high and low mood swings do cross over to some of these others, but bipolar for high and low mood swings. Good faith actions provide for immunity from civil or criminal actions as long as the officer does not commit an act of negligence. Okay, when dealing with mental health inmates or the Baker Act. Well, that's true. Now, you got to be very careful here. We're protected to a limit. But if you go in there with a mental health inmate and grab them and throw them around and throw them in a shower and turn the water on as hot as you can, you're not protected for those things. Okay, folks? Come on. Work smarter. You also want to keep your career, right? You didn't put all these years in just to get fired, terminated, or arrested. Okay, that's another reason we're teaching these classes. You stay calm. You stay cool. You stay de-escalated. You keep your job. You keep your career. Okay? Stay calm, folks. And I have one calling 911, but that 911 for us would be calling on the radio, giving the location, a description of the person in crisis, give the age, race, and sex. It's okay. We're trying to help a person here. Symptoms the person is experiencing, give those so that everybody can be ready to come and respond and assist you. Okay. You should always consider the what ifs. What if this happens in my dorm? What if this happens in my pod? How would I react, and play those scenarios in your mind? I mentioned that earlier. Who should communicate with the inmate in a mental health crisis? The highest ranking person? One CIT certified person? At least two more or more officers? Only the psychologist or mental health? Well, no, it's going to be one certified person or one deputy. I explained that earlier on why we don't want to have more than one talking to the inmate, because they already hear a lot of voices. Okay? In any situation, it's another question I had on my thing here with 4 possible answers. I'll just give you the answer. It's all of the above. Maintain order, safety, and proper decorum. You keep safe and keep yourself safe. You want to go home at night. Ensure the safety of yourself and all your fellow officers and all the civilian employees of the prison. And of course, we've talked about notifying your supervisors over the radio. Just some things that I hope you can take heed to. You really need to take this class because it's a 40-hour crisis intervention class. I just pushed it into a very small video here. But I think I've hit some high points for you guys to work on and your agency to take heed and work on. Please, get some crisis intervention training, and if your agency doesn't have it, ask them to get it. If they don't want to get it, do it on your own. It's good. It's good. It'll help you save your career. It'll help you in dangerous situations with mental health inmates. Get it done, folks. Stay safe, stay healthy, and go home to your family and keep your career. Thank you very much. Gary York, True Prison Stories.